Here's our last review of Chapter 8. It's Chapter 8, Review 2, Electric Boogaloo. So here's the warm-up. I want you to solve these 4 problems. So n is equal to 16, m is equal to 2, and g is equal to 1/5. In this case, m does not mean slope. We're not doing it like that. They just designated a letter. All we're doing is plug and play. So this is pretty easy stuff. All we are doing is plug and play. So we're going to look at this first problem, 2n minus 6. Simply, what is the first step? Not the answer, but what's the first step, Oswaldo? Yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in my 16. So I'm going to plug in that 16 right here. And as Oswaldo said, it's multiplication that's happening because these two are touching. So we multiply 2 times 16. What do we get when we multiply 2 times 16, Rafi? Perfect, so we get 32 minus 6. 32 minus 6 is, Malia? Not 24. It's 26. So, what about for this next problem? We have 12 divided by m. 12 over m. Lucy. We plug in the 2, so we get 12 over 2. 12 divided by 2, what's the answer, Lucy? 6. Excellent. What about for this next one? What do I have to do, Ben?
You have to plug in m and n.
I have to plug in both m and n. Very fun. Now, so I plug them in. I plug in m and I plug in n. And I have to solve, so I multiply. Nathan, what do I do?
You multiply.
What do I multiply? And I get?
16.
Perfect. 8 times 2 is 16. Minus 16, our answer is? 0. Last one, which is the most complicated, which I said in air quotes, is as such. We have 50g squared. So we've got 50 times g squared. That's the important distinction. Does the square apply to the 50? No. So the square only applies to the g. So I've got 1/5 squared. How else can I write 1/5 squared without that little square sign? How can I write it, Miles?
1/5 times 1/5.
Awesome. 1/5 times 1/5. When we multiply, do we multiply across or cross? When we multiply, do we multiply across or cross, Matthew? Across. So we get 1 times 1 is 1. 5 times 5 is 25. So our 1/5 squared becomes 1/25. When we do that, 50 times 1/25 is actually the same as 50 divided by 25. We know that. Keep, change, flip. So it'd be 50 divided by 25. What is 50 divided by 25, Oleg? Perfect. The answer is 2. But now I want to take a second just to look at this. For number 1, we can also do this as a T-chart. Sure, we were given this information up here, but multiple numbers work. It's just that's what we were given. So for that number 1 problem, if we're looking just at that 2n minus 6, I want to plug in all these other numbers. We already did 16. When we did 16, we got 26, right?
Yeah.
Now let's do it with the others. We're just doing plug and play. 2 times -1 minus 6. 2 times 0 minus 6. 2 times 1 minus 6. And 2 times 3 minus 6. I just have those numbers because that's what's in the T-chart. And all I did was plug in these values. Yes, it says X, but I'll just, to make it our lives easier, make it X right there.
Thank you.
All I did was I took these values and I plugged them each individually in for X. So I had this -1, I had this 0, I had this 1, and I had this 3 that I plugged in. So now we're going to solve. We're going to do it together just because it's quick and we want to get through this. 2 times negative 1. What is 2 times negative 1, Liam? What's 2 times negative 1? Negative 2. Because a negative times a positive is a negative. An odd number of negative terms makes a negative. An even number of negative terms makes a positive. Negative 2 minus 6. Negative 2 minus 6, Tobias? Negative 8. Excellent. Negative 8. This next one. 2 times 0 is 0. Minus 6. 0 minus 6 is negative 6. 2 times 1 is 2. Minus 6. What's 2 minus 6, Rocco? Negative 4. And lastly, 2 times 3 is 6. Minus 6 is 0. So I'd fill out my chart. I got negative 8, negative 6, negative 4, and 0. If we look at something really quickly, when our x's are increasing by 1, which is just that section right there, what is our y increasing by? What is it, Hannah? It's increasing by 2. That's the slope right there. And then also, when we have our b, our y-intercept, is our y-intercept when x is 0 or when y is 0? What is it? Gore. When x is 0. So what is my y value in this chart when x is 0? Rocco. Negative 6. Those two match. And look. Negative 6. So that's how you can use a t-chart to get to an equation. That's how you can use an equation to solve for y values based on that. So we have all of this. For this next one, what we're going to do is we're going to just write the expressions. We're going to write the expressions. We know that they are not necessarily, one of them actually would be an equation if it has an equal sign. So I want you to write the expressions or equations for number 1 and number 2. Romario, what did you get as your expression for number 1? You got 1/8. Do we agree with this?
Yeah.
Yeah, 1/8 C minus 4. So 4 points fewer means subtraction. Than means after. Subtraction after. And then 1/8 the points. We could say 1/8 of the points that helps us remind its multiplication. And our unknown is the points the Cubs scored. So that's how we do it. What about for the second one, Hannah? The total cost of a shirt and an $8 pair of socks. What did you get?
I did x plus 8.
Perfect. X plus 8. Because we want to find the total cost. Here is my shirt. Here is my socks. We find out how much I spent. Can I solve these problems?
No, because you don't have.
No.
You don't have x.
There's no equal sign. There's no number given that I can plug in. I can't solve these until I'm either given in equals like 14 or until I say C equals 16. Stuff like that. That's the only way that we can solve those problems. So, Moesha's music library has 17 more than 2 times the number of songs than Damien's music library. Define a variable and write an expression to represent the number of songs in Moesha's library. So I want you to write this expression. As a class, what is our variable? We should already be able to identify our unknowns really quickly here. What is our unknown here, Elsie?
S, which is the number of songs in Damien's music library.
So what do we think? Do we agree? Yeah, so it's in Moesha's music library. Damien helps. We're doing that. But we don't know what Moesha's it says define a variable and write an expression to find it. So we're going to have two variables in this one. It would be Moesha's library is. It has what? We're going to have two variables, but in this case, they would give us an answer to solve. So first, write out this equation. Moesha's library is equal to, and then we have to write our equation. Lucy, what is your equation?
M equals D2 plus 17.
Perfect. 2D plus 17. We got that. 17 more than, which means it's more, plus than, which makes it after. Then 2 times the number of songs than Damien's. So 2 times Damien. Excellent. That's how we would write it. Can I solve this?
Yeah.
No, there's 2 variables. Even though I've got my equal sign, there's still 2 variables. What about now? Then find the number of songs in Moesha's library if Damien has 5 songs. Now can I solve it? Yes. So what am I going to be plugging in? Who can tell me what I'm going to be plugging in? Malia?
I'm going to plug in the 5.
5 where?
Replace the 5 with the 5.
Excellent. We replace the D with the 5. So we would get M equals 2 times 5 plus 17. We get M equals 10 plus 17. So our final answer is M equals 27. A lot of this stuff that we're doing is plug and play. All of the linear equations, our functions, our graphs, all of those, once given an equation, once you've found an equation, are plug and play. It is as simple as plug and play. So, here's just one to look at. Our slope is equal to our M, which is equal to the y increase. Those are all the same things. Our y-intercept is our B, which is the y value when x is 0. So, how much is our y increasing by in this case, Miles?
Our y is increasing by 2.
Yeah, so each time we're increasing by 2. And we already made sure that this is all increasing by 1. That's what matters. So it's increasing by 2. So then what would our slope be? What is M then, Jaden? Andrew, what's our slope?
M equals y increase.
So it's the y increase. And what is our y increase?
Y intercept.
So our y is increasing by 2. That's it. It's as simple as that. Now, our y-intercept is our b. It's the y value when x is 0. So, what is our y value when x is 0, Fernando? Perfect. -1. Here we look. X is 0. Y is -1. Those are pairs, the ones that we have here. Those are pairs. Now, if we're being really big-brained here, what would our equation be? Y equals what, Hannah?
Y equals 2m plus -1.
Perfect. It would be y equals 2x plus -1 or simply -1. Look at that. By looking at our chart, we were able to find our slope, our y-intercept, and thus we were able to come up with our problem. And if I didn't have the other ones, let's check our work first of all. Let's check it. If I had 1, I plug in 1 for x. I get 2 times 1 is 2 minus 1 is my other 1. If I had 2, 2 times 2 is 4. 4 minus 1 is 3. What if I had this number? I want the number 10. What would my answer be if my number was 10? Let's see, Michelle. It would be 19, because 2 times 10 is 20, minus 1 is 19. Oswaldo, what if I wanted to get my y value to equal -5? Do I plug that -5 into my x? No, where do I plug it into? The y. So in this case, I want to figure out -5 equals 2x plus 1. So I solve this equation. How do I solve it, Oswaldo? What's my first step? Remember, what do I want to do? Who can remember that term of what I want to do first? Let's see, Oswaldo. We are doing the reverse PEMDAS, but why are we doing it, Rocco? We are doing it to do what?
To find the y increase.
To find not the y increase. We already have our equation. I'll give you a hint. It starts with an I. What are we doing, Mario? What are we doing, Hannah? Not the y-intercept. It starts with I. We are doing. What are we doing? You guys need to know this. We all used to know this, Miles.
Isolate the variable.
Isolate the variable. So we want to get it down. We want to get this answer down to an x equals something. An x equals something. So what's my first step that I do then, Oswaldo? The reverse PEMDAS. Yeah, so I'm gonna deal with that -1. How do I get rid of a -1? Hannah?
You would add in a positive one to each side.
Add 1 to each side. That goes away. -1 plus 1 becomes 0. -5 plus 1 becomes, what does -5 plus 1 become? Rocco? -4. Then what's the next step I have to do? What's the next step I have to do? Alinza. Perfect, Alinza. I'm going to divide each side by 2. What is -4 divided by 2? -4 divided by 2. Anita. -2. So I get my x equals -2. So you have to make sure that when you're doing your plug and play, you know where you're plugging it in. If they give you the y value, then you plug in for the y. If they give you the x value, you plug in for the x. What is our input? Which value is our input? Lucy. It is our x. As such, Rafi, what value is our output? So if our input is x, our output, as Rafi said, is y. Which one is our independent variable? Who can tell me which one the independent variable is? Fernando. Our independent variable is x. And I remember this because it starts with in. So what would we call the y? If this is our independent variable, Gloria, what is our y?
Dependent variable.
It is our dependent variable. Because it depends. Whatever my x value is, I can change that based on whatever. But my y, because it's a y equals, it depends on whatever's on that other side. Depends on whatever's on that other side. Here, I want you guys to combine the like terms. Combine the like terms. Gore, what does a like term mean? Yeah, with the same variable or not. So for example, this has an x. This does not have an x. This has an x. This does not have an x. So we're only able to combine them if they share the same variable. Technically 7 and 3 do share a variable. The variable is no variable. Exactly. So if we combined these like terms, what would I get as my answer, Elsie?
5x plus 10.
So you're very close. It's not 5x plus 10. You're missing one part, Oswaldo.
1x plus 10.
It is 1x or simply x plus 10. Who can tell me Elsie's mistake? What was Elsie's mistake, Hannah?
She kind of flipped around.
She didn't flip it around, but she did forget something. What did she forget, Lucy? Yeah, the operation in front of each number matters. The operation in front of each number matters. So if I combined the like terms for number 2, if I combine the like terms for that second one, Ben, what would I get?
For the 2x.
For that second one, what would I get?
3x.
So I'm gonna see. We're gonna look at this one together. It's not 3x. Jenna, do you know what we get? X. Oops, I'm doing it with circles. We get x plus y plus 8. Let's look at how we did that. I underline. Here's a y. Here's a y. But it's got a negative. So 4 minus 3 is 1. Let's look at my x's. I've got a positive 2x and a negative x. When I do that, that gives me simply x. And then can I combine this 8 with anything?
No.
There's no other term, so I just get 8. Make sure you always have to include the operation happening before the term. For these ones, I want you to use the distributive property. Who would like to tell me what the distributive property means? What does it mean, Hannah?
It's like where you multiply 2 by.
Yeah, so we're multiplying it. We're multiplying what's outside the parentheses by everything inside the parentheses. Exactly. We're distributing something. If your parents had cookies and they distributed it to you and your siblings, they distributed it to all of you. They distributed it to all of you. So if I looked at this first one, I'm just going to distribute it here. So I'm going to get 2x plus 6, right? No. So what am I going to have to do? I have to distribute it to both. So what is my answer then going to be, Nathan? 2x plus 12. Excellent. What's my answer for that second one? What's the answer for the second one? Adriana.
So you distribute 4 plus 2, that would be 6.
So it's not plus, we're multiplying. It's a great guess because this means multiply.
4 times 2 is 8, and then minus 7.
So we get 8x
8x
and
minus 7 would be 1x.
so we can't combine those, just like the like terms. We have to distribute it to both of them. So it's not 8x minus 7 equals x because 7 doesn't have an x. What do I have to do, Ben?
Is it 4 times negative 7, which is negative 28?
Yes, it's 4 times negative 7, which is negative 28. We include the operation, always. What about this last one, then? What about this last one, Fernando? Negative 3x minus 18. Do we agree?
Yeah.
We are almost correct. We are almost correct. Who can spot the one problem here? Who can spot it, Jenna? A negative times a negative is a positive. Negative 3 times negative 6 gets us positive 18. Exactly. Always be careful. For all of math, from now until forever, negatives are going to be your biggest problem. It is so easy to just not see a negative or to just forget it and stuff like that. Before tests, I used to write down, don't forget the negative on my hand. When I did calculus, I wrote down plus C, but that comes later in calculus. So, I want you guys to solve A and B. So, in a video game, each player earns 5 points for reaching the next level and 15 points for each coin collected. Write an equation to find P, the total points for collecting C coins after reaching the next level. What did you get as your equation, Michelle? You didn't do it yet? That's okay. Anita said P equals 5 plus 15C. And she's correct here because it asks us P, the total points. P equals collecting C coins. We don't know how many coins, but each coin is worth 15 points. So it's 15C. After reaching the next level, just one level, so we've got that 5 points. You could also write P equals 15C plus 5. Same exact thing. So we see that right there. Now, the total points is 15 times the number of coins collected plus 5 points for reaching the next level. Our 5 is our constant, and our 15 is our coefficient. So if we made a table to show the number of coins collected, C, and the total of points, P. Let's do this. 0, 1, 2. If I collect 0 coins, how many points do I have? Ben. 0. If I collect 1 coin, how many points do I have then, Melanie? Exactly, we get 15. What about when it's 2 then, Nathan? When it's 2? 30. And if I graphed this, I would get 0 at 0, 1 at this terrible 15, 2 at this 30, 3 would bring me up to 45. Look at that. We would have this. It says analyze the graph. It line. It line.
Wait, what?
Here are 2 problems. Who would like to read the first one for me, Gore? G is less than 6. Emerson, read the second one for me. Perfect. N is greater than or equal to 9. I made it an H, but let's make it an N. So, which one is going to have, when we're doing this, when we're plotting inequalities, what is the thing that we have to remember when plotting inequalities? Lucy. Excellent. So she said if it's got that equal to, it's going to be closed. And if it doesn't, if it's just the greater or less, then it's going to be open. So if this was 6 and this was 9, for the first one, is my dot going to be open or closed, Ben?
Which one? Open.
It's going to be open. And which way am I going to go? Which way, Hannah? Left or right? Left. Excellent. What about this second one? This second one, Matthew, open dot or closed dot? Closed dot. And which direction am I going to be going, Adriana? Right, exactly. So you have to pay attention. By the way, 6 is greater than G is the same thing. 9 is less than or equal to N is the same thing. You always just have to pay attention to which direction that you are going. I have this inequality. D plus 13 is greater than or equal to 22. How do I solve this? Carmen, how do I solve it? Nathan, what is it that I want to do? I want to isolate the variable. I want to get it to be D is greater than or equal to. How do I get it to D is greater than or equal to, Carmen? Excellent, I subtract 13. So I get D is greater than or equal to 22, right?
No.
No? Why not?
Because
Oswaldo, what you do on one side, you got to do to the other. We subtract that. And what do we get as our answer then? We get 9. Here's our 9. It is going to be a closed dot, and we go to the right. We solve inequalities the exact same way that we solve equations. The only difference is you need to know if it's going to be an open dot or a closed dot and which direction it goes.